Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about bot lane combos. These are going to be lane pairings that are really strong and synergize very well together, and also lane pairings that are viable in solo queue. Please keep in mind that this is not going to be an exhaustive list. This is just going to be the main ones or the strongest that come to mind. So if your favorite pairing or combination is not in this video, please find it in your heart to forgive me. For each bot lane combo, I'm going to be talking about their identity, why they're so good together, how to actually play out that bot lane combo, how to counter that combo, and then I'm going to show some VODs, mostly from pro players piloting that combo. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So for the first bot lane combo, we're going to be talking about Ezreal Karma. Now, their identity. They are the strongest level 1 bot lane pairing. They have insane poke. They can be very oppressive, especially if they land their skill shots. Normally, Ezreal struggles to win lane, but Karma is a perfect combo for Ezreal, bringing that lane dominance while Ezreal's mobility prevents easily countering this lane with all in. And also, of course, both of them are having long range Qs where Karma's Q slowing complements Ezreal's Q landing. So let's talk about how to play Ezreal Karma now. How you typically want to play Ezreal Karma is you have one champ on each side of the wave. Ideally Ezreal towards river, where he will be throwing out his Qs and he will be auto-attacking minions as well occasionally. And Karma is going to be on the bush side of the lane. And then you kind of have this pincering, threatening triangle with your skill shots, and they'd have nowhere safe to stand, and they practically have to just leave the lane. Now, in order to ensure that your poke rate is really high, Karma really needs to make most of her R Qs, and Ezreal needs to make sure that he can throw out his Qs when they are slowed by Karma's Q. Now, since their identity is being really strong level 1 with insane poke, it is very important to start in lane as Ezreal Karma. And what you can look to do is poke enemy bot lane when they are coming back from leashing or just when they're trying to enter the lane. If you can prevent them from entering the lane whatsoever, which you easily can, then you can just maintain control of the lane for pretty much the entire laning phase and just dominate them. Now, Karma is the one in this lane that is susceptible to getting all in. So if you are playing Ezreal Karma, you might have to play on Karma's Q range, or you might have to even play on her R and Q range to stay out of danger's way, but you should be able to dominate from level 1, and then you shouldn't necessarily be susceptible to all-ins if you have minion wave control, if you have poked them out. Alright, let's talk about how to counter, or at least how to try to counter Ezreal Karma. The only realistic way to reliably counter this lane is to find an all-in. So this is where you would want an all-in ADC paired with preferably Naut or Pike, which have very long, very threatening all-in engages. And what you want to do is ideally start in lane to match them and then have a psychotic level 1 all-in fight. Or you stay healthy, concede the first several levels, wait until you're level 2 or level 3, and then find that window to all-in. Otherwise, the best bet is you're just going to have to put your dancing shoes on, try to dodge their spells, and then take a really aggressive trade when the opportunity presents itself. Okay, let's have a look at how you actually can play Ezreal Karma, and we're going to be watching EDG's bot lane, Viper and Mako, reigning world champions, and already off the bat what we can notice is Mako warded midbush based and took sweeper to try and control midbush to pressure the lane from the beginning. You can also notice that they're not leashing at all, so they are trying to use Ezreal Karma's level 1 strength to its fullest. Very aggressively posturing forwards, making sure that the enemy can't safely enter the lane without getting poked out. And so right now, this is something that you can do as well. You can see that Ezreal pulled the wave onto the right side of the lane, and Karma is hovering on the left side of the lane. And so what they're going to look to do is create as much open space for Karma to poke from as possible at the start, and then eventually they're going to look to switch around. But as you can see, they're already poking the enemy as soon as they're trying to come to lane. And they're going to look to maintain minion wave control, maintain prio, splash those Karma Qs off of the wave, and then ideally Ezreal can look to follow up the Qs afterwards. They're not always going to do it perfectly, but you can hopefully see the concept. So Ezreal is getting a little bit liberal with his Q. Obviously, Karma's missing their Q as well. But the concept is there, right? They're looking to control the wave, start in lane, harass as the enemy comes into lane, and playing off those RQ cooldowns. So ideally, Ezreal has his Q up when Karma has her RQ so that they can layer that poke. And you can see how they have one skill shot thrower on one side of the lane and the other on the other. So it's very hard for the enemy to reliably position to dodge poke. All right, we'll just have a look at a little bit more from this one. So they're not strictly abiding to Karma on bot side, Ezreal on top side. They're just making sure that they do have a pincer from both sides. Unreal that Ezreal misses his Q there, but you know, you can see the synergy there and potentially landing all of these skill shots together, and then the new wave comes in, and then they're shoving this wave, they're maintaining control of the wave, they're maintaining minion HP advantage, and they're just going to really dominate this early game. So this is what you can look to do as Ezreal Karma. Alright, next bot lane combo we're going to talk about is Caitlyn and Lux. They have insane lane control and very long range, siege, and surprising one-shot potential with bind into trap that can really catch a lot of lanes off guard. In terms of how to play Caitlyn Lux, what you want to do is, once again, you want to start in lane, you want to maintain minion wave control, so very similar to Ezreal Karma in that sense, and you want to start harassing with Comet and Epoke as Lux. Or if you're in pro play and you want to go opt for the Guardian route, you can start either W, Shield Bash, or Q, but either way, you want to start controlling and harassing and trading, and otherwise you just want to play that war of attrition. You want to find those windows where you are going to bind them with Lux, and then Caitlyn can just put a trap on them, and then you can just blow them up in a second. And if Lux finds these windows to dip into fog, into the bushes, and then find a blind or find a hidden Q that the enemy has a harder time to react to, then that's great. What you can also do is throw out your E as Lux, put them in that slow field, and then land your Q. And then you can really start that one-shotting combo together. In terms of how to counter, this is going to be a lot more straightforward than Ezreal Karma. They have a very clear weakness, and they are susceptible to getting all-in and to getting ganked, and to then not having control of the lane. So there's a lot of pressure on Caitlyn Lux to maintain control of the lane. Ezreal Karma has a little bit more leeway, but if Caitlyn Lux is not dominating from minute one for the entire laning phase, they're going to struggle. Now, this isn't as extensive as it used to be in the past, because Caitlyn's scaling has improved, but still their identity is to dominate laning phase. And so if you're versing them and you want to beat them, you want to start in lane, you want to get your jungler to path down and then look for those ganks. So if you start in lane and you prevent them from getting that upper hand, then you can potentially hit level 2 all in them and they're going to be useless. If you can't manage to do that, you want to force some heavy trades as opposed to slowly getting bled out and poked. And if you can do that, if you can even trade some flashes and you really start to chunk them down, then they're less able to just constantly poke, shove, harass, and they are susceptible to getting ganked or all-in. Supports that you generally want to pick into Caitlyn Lux. So the first one that comes to mind is Blitzcrank, as you can just hook one of them and then they're going to die. Pike, fantastic in 2v2 all-ins. Nautilus as well. Even Amumu with 2 Qs, he can really look for that extended all-in, and all of these champs have long range with which to match Caitlyn Lux. If you're picking engagers that don't have that long of a engaged range, you know, like Leona or Rel, you're going to struggle to really get on top of them. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find a pro view for Caitlyn Lux, but this is from the Season 12 Worlds group stage that was played recently. What happened is both of these lanes started in lane, so it's good that they recognize that that is important, and then Caitlyn Lux got the upper hand on the minion wave. They're controlling the wave, and I just want you to see what they can potentially do. And so here what happens is they're looking to poke in here. This is where Lux is throwing out that E field to ensure that the Karma is slowed, and look how the all-in attempt is going to be on Karma instead of Ezreal, because Ezreal is so mobile. So they're slowing the Karma, and then they get to land that binding, and they play this all-in horrendously, but they could easily find this all-in here. And so what Lux needs to do in this situation is auto-attack both times with her passive damage, and so Lux should be moving forwards right now, recognizing how much 100-0 threat they have, finding 2 auto-attacks with that Ignite. But even though they play it horribly, they almost get the kill, and you can see the potential one-shot that this lane can have. And so, yeah, you just control the lane, and then eventually set up that Q binding into a one-shot. Alright, moving on to the next bot lane combo, and this is a combo that you guys will be sick of seeing in pro play, and potentially even your solo queue games for this whole year, Lucian Nami. And this is even after Nami's electrocute interaction with her E has been nerfed. So Lucian Nami, their identity is that they have insane burst and unparalleled damage at level 3 and onwards, and even their level 2 is pretty strong. But they do have quite a weak level 1, and we'll talk about how to capitalize on that and how to counter. But they are relevant and powerful at all stages of the game, and so this is something that a lane like Caitlyn Lux might struggle with if they don't accelerate. Lucian Nami, throughout the whole game, they have a lot of burst and a lot of one-shot potential. The other thing about Lucian Nami is that they have non-committal bursts, so all Nami needs to do is press E on Lucian, and then Lucian, E's forwards, W's, and ults, and you can just one-shot someone from a screen away, whereas other all-in lanes to one-shot, you need to really commit and get in a high-risk situation. In terms of how to play, there's not going to be anything special here. I just want Namis to make sure that they rush Mandate to amplify damage as fast as possible, and you want to take W and then E, and you can heavy trade at level 2. Just keep in mind that the proactivity needs to come from Lucian. Don't force the trade from yourself as Nami. I've seen a lot of my students as Nami recognizing that they can trade, but then their Lucian doesn't want to, and then they try to initiate the trade as Nami, and then it just doesn't look too good. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to play. Take short, heavy trades, back off, and your Lucian should have a lot of agency to find kills. In terms of how to counter Lucian Nami, this is a tricky lane to counter. This is one of the reasons why it is the most blind-picked lane in pro play, or one of, for this whole year. You can opt in for a scaling enchanter, such as a Lulu, typically paired with Aphelios, as Aphelios enjoys versing short-range lanes. So then you can, prevent them from jumping in on you, and you can theoretically outscale them as the game goes on. Picking all in is tough versus Lucian Nami, because if you can't 100-0, then the Lucian Nami lane is just going to outburst you, and Nami isn't going to be the one forwards in engage range. She's going to be sitting behind Lucian, ready to E and W him, and then it's harder to lock him down. It's also worth mentioning Draven here, as Draven excels versus this low-range Lucian as well. So I would say probably Draven paired with an Engager or Aphelios Lulu. And this Aphelios Lulu answer is something that you will see in Pro Play and Worlds at the moment. You can also pair Renata with a low-range ADC, like Aphelios, like Kalista, like Draven, and then, really force this all-in trade where the Lucian Nami typically wants shorter burst trades. Okay, so let's look at an example of Lucian Nami, and so we're going to be jumping into the LPL Pro View again. Unfortunately, we're going to have the Zeri and Lulu side, but we will be able to see what Lucian Nami wants to do and their strengths and weaknesses roughly in the early laning phase. And so, as I mentioned, they have quite a weak level 1, and so what this team, the blue side team here, decided to do is start in lane and control the bushes, and then try to make the most of their level 1 strength before Lucian Nami can really take control of the lane. And so you can see the concept, even if the execution is not quite there for blue side. And so I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. You can see blue side has control of the wave. Lucian Nami recognize that, and they're going to wait until they're level 2, level 3 to start finding those heavy trade windows. And so blue team is just trying to maintain control of the wave, and Lucian Nami is going to eventually look for that window to find that heavy trade when they have their cooldowns up. And that is going to come in the near future here. So Lulu is stepping way too far forwards, and then this is just a small example of what can happen if you disrespect Lucian Nami's upfront burst. So Lulu walking too far forwards, and now Lucian can get his full combo there, and that's a lot of damage, right? And it's only going to get worse as the game goes on. So what we're going to do now is have a look at a slightly later stage of a game and look at how much one-shot threat that they have. Okay, so this is in Season 12 Worlds that was just played recently. There was Genji versus 100 Thieves. And as you can see, the Lucian is pretty strong, but he's not like, 5 kills out of control. He's only got 1 completed item here, but this is the type of burst that you can expect from Lucian Nami. I'm sure this isn't going to be new to a lot of you, but it's just worth showing. He just jumps forwards and then, finds a kill. And even if, Lulu used her ult or Aphelios uses heal, he would be forced to base anyway. And just take note of how non-committal this type of play is. They're practically tower diving outside of the range of the tower. Moving on to Kalista Thresh. This is an insane 100-0 threat from level 1 to the end of the game, which is very unique for a bot lane. They are mobile, they have heavy engage, they are hard to lock down, and they are very scary. The very scary lane, especially in solo queue. They have a lot of flexible options, almost a jack of all trades, master of none in some ways. And though they have fallen out of the meta recently, I believe they've been dominant for so long that I think it's worth mentioning them here as well, and since they're so strong in solo queue. So in terms of how to play Kalista Thresh, from the Thresh's perspective, you need to pressure from Fog. You need to recognize your 100-0 potential and find those hooks, or even Flash Flay with Glacial can be enough for that 100-0 from level 1, level 2, etc. So this lane rewards proactivity. You want to look to cheese bushes, use your flash, set up ganks, etc. The difference between executing this lane well and poorly is going to be proactivity and actually finding these windows to land your hooks. Also not hesitating to use your flash. With Cosmic, with Hex Flash, then you can repeatedly pressure, and that initial flash flay should get you a huge chunk and lead in the lane. In terms of how to counter this lane, so if Kalista Thresh is kept at an arm's length, then they can struggle. So some of the other combos that we have talked about, the Caitlyn Lux, the Ezreal Karma, these can be good answers. Otherwise, Trist with an all-in support, and Engager with Trist's faster 100-0 burst is the other main option. If she just gets to jump on Kalista and one-shot her, then that's exactly what you can do. Although Thresh can position to disengage these engage attempts with his Flay, this type of matchup can be very volatile. And the Triss plus Engager support is only going to have kill threat from level 2 onwards, so Kalista Thresh can still set up the lane and dominate from the beginning. So in terms of what Kalista Thresh can actually look like, here is a great example where the enemy team picked Ezreal Karma to keep them at arm's length. And now we can see if they are creative and proactive and they look to find one hook, then they can just, that's all they need to really pull the trigger and kill the enemy. So here they're looking for a creative window to sneak into Fog, and then Thresh finds a great hook past the minion wave here. The hook lands and now they just have to commit to an all-in, right? He flays after the flash, and then Kalista has the ult, so post 6 their kill threat is insane. Very exciting skirmish to watch, but this is a 2 for 0 in a 2v2 if the enemy mid and jungle were not moving down. So I just want to emphasize being creative and proactive with this lane. Okay, the last bot lane combo we're going to talk about, it's not a specific combo, but it's a Samira plus an all-in support. And the supports that you can think of for this, Nautilus and Pike, they have insane 2v2 early kill threat. We can also put in, Rel, Amumu, Alistair, pretty much any of the engage supports. Their identity, this is very self-explanatory. You find an all-in, and there's an element of, ease of execution for a Samira plus an all-in lane. Typically, it's not that hard to land an all-in. It's just about being in the right spot to find that all-in initially. And the ease of execution, Lucian Nami has some of that, but the Kalista Thresh and the Ezreal Karma and the Caitlyn Lux can be quite tricky to pull off. So I recommend this. This type of lane thrives in solo queue, and it is easy to execute. In terms of how to play Samira plus an all-in support, now Samira with an all-in support is going to really struggle in level 1. Samira is practically a ranged minion level 1, and so if you are able to start in lane, then you can get control of the first wave and potentially get to that level 2 without getting dominated and suffocated on that first level. Otherwise, it's very important to stay healthy so that when you do have your kill threat on the later levels, then you are able to actually look for those engages. And you need to recognize your 100-0 threat that you have. So this lane is just going to be a lot about damage assessment. Do you need a 2-step? Can you commit to that 1-step and just 100-0 kill someone? I also want to emphasize that looking for the all-in on the enemy ADC is going to be a lot better than the enemy support in general, because if you guys are all focusing on the support and the enemy ADC has free reign to potentially trade and turn around this fight for a 1-for-1 or even a 1-for-2. And so I think a lot of where I see Samira and an all-in support fail is when people overplay their hands level 1 and they don't realize that they really need that level 2 to have that kill threat. In terms of how to counter Samira and an all-in lane, they lose to getting poked out and war of attrition, especially level 1 like I've talked about, where that 100-0 threat isn't there yet. However, if they play their cards right and they stay healthy and wait for their windows to actually find those all-ins, then they're going to have a lot of agency. What you can also pick into this lane is a scaling ADC with Janna or Renata, who are enchanters that have quite a lot of laning disengage. Janna's Q with Glacial, Renata's Q and her W. And so you can play to survive and scale as well. Now, Samira with an all-in support, if they are weak-sided, they are very useless. And so what you can do is look to start in lane, get your jungler to clear down towards you, and if you see them leash, then you can just get a free early lane and then start scaling, because if Samira does not snowball in this type of lane, then she's just going to be absolutely useless. Alright, so the example for this lane, this is a Rel game that I played on my Smurf with a Samira, and we are versus MF and Amumu. And so what we're going to notice here is we leashed, they started in lane, and so we're going to just respect us being weak level 1 and them having control over the wave. I'm not going to overplay my hand level 1. I know the kill threat starts to come in at level 2 and onwards. So just staying healthy, just being patient, waiting for the right moment. And eventually that moment is going to come. And we're going to look for and engage on the enemy ADC. Very important. So I'm pressuring from Fog, and then I know that MF is going to look for a last hit on the melee minion over here, and so I'm going to jump in, and now I'm just going to commit to this all-in with the Samira. This is our strength, right? And so we're just going to really commit to killing the MF over here. We get the kill, and then we're going to get a kill on the back end once again. And although this was quite a close 2v2, MF and Amumu, they have a lot of early damage as well. You can see how decisively we committed, and if you do things decisively in League, you're going to have a good time in general. So let's just watch it one more time. Find that engage on the enemy ADC, and then commit all my being into killing the enemy ADC, and not hesitating. And really committing here. So I know that Amumu wants to Q flash onto my ADC, so I'm going to flash block that, and then, if we do everything well enough, then we're going to come out ahead. Okay, let's have a look at one more example on the back end. Okay, so here I want to emphasize once again that the target selection is important. We're looking to go onto the enemy ADC. I've walked straight past the Amumu here, and I'm going to find that window to jump on the ADC. I want to briefly give some honorable mentions for bot lane combos that generally suck in solo queue or have fallen out of the meta. The first one is Lucian Braum. So Braum in solo queue is really tricky to pick. There are a lot of enchanters, but Lucian Braum do have a lot of synergy versus low range lanes and comps, with Lucian's passive being able to apply Braum's passive very quickly. Senatam is another one. This is pretty prolific, but mainly in pro play. Once again, playing a champion like Braum or Tam or Taric, these Wardens can be very tricky to pick in solo queue. Next honorable mention is Cait and Morg, and so I went with Caitlyn Lux because it's a lot more blindable, and Morg, if your E doesn't give you great value, then sometimes it's a little bit awkward. And once again, with the amount of enchanters that are in solo queue, generally enchanters have a good time into Morg, and Morg is good at countering engaged champs, which is more common in pro play. And then the last honorable mention is my personal favorite. It's Kai'Sa with Rel, where post 6, if you attach your Rel's E to the Kai'Sa, then she finds a W, she jumps, you instantly stun them, apply that glacial, and it's just like a really fun, synergy to have. There are a lot of honorable mentions in terms of pairing with Senna. We could talk about Senna Seraphine, but we're just going to call the honorable mentions there. And I'm going to give a few fun combos for you to try on Smurfs or in norms with your friends if you would like. My personal favorite is Ziggs and Veigar. So what you do is you put your Veigar cage and then you push them into the cage with your Ziggs W, and then you just drop a bunch of spells on their heads and you can kill them before they build magic resist, of course. The next fun combo is Jhin and Xerath, where you just make them dance with your ults and you have a lot of, chain CC and range. So it's a very fun duo to have. And then there are a lot of fun combos with Taric paired with different champions. You can pair it with Kled, you can pair it with Pyke, you can pair it with Lee Sin, just a lot of mobility and then really getting into the enemy's face and skirmishing. I would love to hear your personal fun combo in the bot lane. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm always looking for inspiration to try out some new fun bot lanes. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and found this video helpful in some capacity. I always forget that you can duo below masters, so maybe if you have an ADC duo, you can try out some of these combos. Please consider liking and subscribing, but only if you enjoyed this type of content. And if you want to take your support gameplay and mentality to the next level, I'm going to be leaving my links to private coaching and to Patreon for School of Support coaching and educational content in the description below, as always. Thanks again for watching, and see you guys later.